From WBUR Boston and NPR, I'm Tom Asbrook, and this is On Point. Hashtag Gamergate may mean nothing to you. If you're in its grip, it may mean a lot. It's a fight, really, largely online, between digital game players, gamers, who say they want more ethical journalism in their realm, and critics who say Gamergate activists are online misogynists, thugs, bullies, trying to intimidate, dominate their world. This hour, On Point, Gamergate, culture clash, and maybe the future of hardball cultural politics. A lot of people to talk to today. Joining me first from New York is Kyle Wagner, a staff writer at Deadspin and Gawker Media's editor for Regressing, a sports feature site. His big write-up of the Gamergate affair is headlined, "The Future of the Culture Wars is Here, and it's Gamergate." You can link to it at our website, onpointradio.org. Kyle Wagner, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Take us into this, because, you've got people who are deeply enmeshed in this, and then a lot of others who will not know a thing about it, as much as it is all over the web these days. What's going on with Gamergate?
Okay, so as happens a lot of times, as much as this has a beginning, it started with a game called Depression Quest and a developer named Zoe Quinn. She released this game last year, and at the time she released it, so Depression Quest is basically a choose-your-own-adventure style game where the user goes through and just manages depression. It was critically lauded at the time, and a lot of gamers just really took offense to this because they didn't think it was a very good game, and she was harassed at the time. She received threats when it went on sale. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward, a few months ago, her ex-boyfriend puts up a 40,000-word post about their breakup and alleges that she cheated on him with multiple men, one of whom was a game journalist. And through gritted teeth or whatever, the allegation was that she used sexual favors to receive good coverage for her game, and this is what set everything off. From then, she received a lot of threats. She was, it's called doxxed. That means her personal information was put online, nude photos, and similar.
Did you say nude photos? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
Okay.
So nude photos from their relationship. Mm-hmm. And these things ended up online, and from there, other people got involved. Anita Sarkeesian, who is a notable feminist within gaming, became involved. She also received threats. And it became an allegation, it became a discussion of whether developers were using either romantic relationships or other relationships to receive good coverage, but at the same time, the women who were involved were receiving really grotesque threats from some members of what would later be known as Gamergate.
The threats sound bad, but just at first blush, this sounds like a spat, not a kind of apocalypse or big culture clash. What's it signify?
Right. So eventually, this metasized with several gaming sites writing op-eds that all had basically the same point, which was the death of gamers. And this was actually a celebration of gamers, saying that people who play games are too broad a spectrum, video games are too popular to just identify as gamers anymore. Some people are miserable and are doing these terrible things to these women. Others just want to play games, just want to have fun. And that was the basic conceit of these things, but it was taken very literally to mean that some people in Gamergate, or I guess most people in Gamergate, took this to mean that the video game outlets didn't like their audience, that they thought everyone was just a trollish white male who just wanted women out of gaming, and that seems to be the bedrock of what Gamergate is set on, saying, no, all of us aren't, trollish white men, but that's really an argument that no one was ever making.
Threats, death threats, sexual threats, whatever was out there, that sounds bad over reviews and so on. On the other hand, I don't mean to make an equivalency here, but I was just listening early today to video online from the gamer community saying, look, this is our world, we care about it, and this is just citizen action against unethical journalists. And yes, they're just covering games, but games are what we care about. We want honesty here. And when we push back, and they've pushed back on many fronts, including boycotts of corporations. Intel, it's dropped its sponsorship of at least one of these outlets. When we push back, we're, described as grotesque. What's wrong with being good, engaged citizens? What do you say to that, Kyle?
So this has been one of the more confounding parts of this is that I totally agree. There are totally unethical things going on in video game journalism. I covered tech for a long time, and it faces all consumer product journalism faces basically the same problem, which is that you trade access for favors or whatever else, and this is going on all over the place. Some of the biggest outlets in video game journalism have very close relationships with some of the biggest publishers, and this is what gets you like slanted coverage or coverage that will lead people to buy games that maybe they won't enjoy as much. These are the real fundamental ethical issues in games journalism, and this doesn't seem to be what Gamergate is talking about. They're talking about more just they don't want what they call social justice warriors coming in and telling them that they need more feminism in their games or that their games are misogynist. This isn't traditionally what's known as ethics in journalism, but that seems to be their talking point, and that's what they're calling it.
And that is certainly out there. You mentioned Anita Sarkeesian, the creator of Feminist Frequency. It's a website that criticizes patriarchy and misogyny in video games. Those things are not hard to find. She got death threats and last week canceled the talk at Utah State over threats of the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. Here's a clip from one of her videos where she talks about how many women in the video games serve as only objects for men.
These sexually objectified female bodies are designed to function as environmental texture, while titillating presumed straight male players. Sometimes they're created to be glorified furniture, but they are frequently programmed as minimally interactive sex objects to be used and abused.
Won't you join us?
And yes, you can find plenty of that. Here's a little sound from a game called Dishonored. A player encounters a prostitute.
Hey, sweetheart. You want to play with me? You're a lot cuter than my regulars.
And another from Binary Domain. Player goes to a brothel.
Sorry, all booked up. Too bad, too, because I would have given a stud like you a free sample.
Okay, Kyle, here, maybe we hear the sound of a culture clash. I mean, you have just described gamers who say they don't want to be the target for social justice warriors. They feel harassed and perhaps put upon. Then you've got others, women and more, saying, look, we want to change this, and by the way, you don't own this world anymore. I guess when people wrote what gamers are over, meaning the traditional stereotype of who was the gamer, it's more diverse than that. Let's change the games themselves. Is that the culture clash you're talking about, Kyle?
It seems to be. So there are two things going on here. One is that the argument against Anita bringing these things up, which I don't agree with at all, is saying that she's cherry picking. Of course she's cherry picking. That's the point, that a lot of the popular games, not all of them, no one is ever arguing all of them, but many of them have things like the ones you just highlighted. Just topless prostitutes being murdered on screen for really to no end. It's just to, as Anita said, just to titillate instead of to inspire any thought. So that's one. But two, well, actually that kind of dovetails into the argument that we don't want women to tell our creators that they can't, express themselves or whatever. But it really is just to titillate, just to entice a young male audience into, enjoying a game as only a young male audience could enjoy it. Like if you're a young female or a young gay man, that's not going to, appeal to you in exactly the same way.
We're going to hear later in this hour from Milo Yiannopoulos. His headline was "Feminist Bullies Tearing the Video Game Industry Apart." It's sort of pushback on this front. But you say in all this, for listeners who are thinking, why do I care about this inside baseball gamer thing? You say this is a dress rehearsal, maybe for a culture clash for American politics on a much larger stage. How so? What do you mean, Kyle?
So this is an audience. It's young, male, traditionally white, but increasingly less so there. that has traditionally been catered to by the video game industry. So all these games, so Call of Duty, all the games that have just sex objects walking around the screen, those have been made specifically for them. But like what they're right about is that it is a zero-sum scenario where if developers and publishers start to turn their attention to a broader spectrum of game, then they can't dedicate the same amount of resources to the type of games that have traditionally been enjoyed by them. This is where they're correct in that maybe there won't be as many Halo clones coming out, or maybe there won't be as many Call of Duty clones coming out.
A kind of mirror image of the wider society where all kinds of privilege may be challenged as our demographics change. But you say the politics may change as well, that this kind of activist go after them with online tools. This isn't just a nice debate. This is really getting in people's faces, putting their addresses in nude pictures, and there are death threats out there. That this is hardball roller derby politics playing out here that you say could spread.
Of course. So you're seeing that with our company right now, actually. So Gawker Media, which owns both Kotaku, which is involved in this story, and Deadspin, where I work, is under boycott, and Gamergate right now is peppering anyone who advertises with Gawker Media to cease doing so.
Hey, that's their right, but it gets messy in a hurry. Kyle Wagner, please stand by at Deadspin. It's great to have you. We're talking about Gamergate. I'm Tom Ashbrook. This is On Point. We're talking this hour about something called Gamergate. You may know all about it. We're looking at the online uproar over sex, sexism, ethics, and charges of misogyny, corruption in the online gaming world. It's into rough stuff. It's spiraling offline. My guest Kyle Wagner with Deadspin and Gawker Media says it may be a model for the future of American politics, culture clash style, where things in the internet age can quickly spiral right off of that screen into your life. There have been death threats here, people calling police to protect them, all about a kind of clash over culture and many gamers say, journalistic ethics in their corner of the world. Kyle Wagner joins us from New York. Here's an interview with BBC Business Matters Forbes contributor Eric Kane saying the core of Gamergate was initially that gamer journalists weren't being honest with their readers because they're too cozy with gamers and developers.
The problem we're seeing with the whole Gamergate controversy right now in terms of journalistic ethics is that everyone is so angry and there's so little dialogue going on that it looks like, these sites don't want to talk about it because they have something to hide. I think that the more upfront that any of these sites can be, the better, whether or not there's actually any problems going on.
We'll be joined in just a moment by Arthur Chu, Soraya Chemaly, Milo Yiannopoulos. Let's get our callers in here. Paul in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for calling, Paul. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. I'm on now?
You're on.
Right. I wanted to call in and point out everyone in Gamergate is fighting against corrupt journalists who have decided what they want to report on. They've decided that they're going to make games about feminism. Doesn't matter what the purpose of whatever they're reviewing was, they're going to turn it into feminism. One of the most recent examples of this is a Polygon review for Bayonetta 2.
Okay.
So it's this game which features a very attractive female protagonist.
Yep.
Her outfit is tight leather, and she's ridiculously campy, and of course she's being very sexual throughout the game.
Okay.
Now, most game review sites looked at this game and they said, well, okay, here's our stance on the gameplay, here's our stance on the story, here's what we like about this game. We rate it 8 out of 10 or something like that.
All right.
Polygon, who is implicated in the Gamergate scandal, looked at Bayonetta and said, look, this game has its merits, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to point out that this character is a sexual object, and that is abhorrent because we are feminists. We cannot abide by having a character who's a sexual object. They're saying that all women are there for sex, and that's their only point. Now, not only does that go against one of the core views of feminism, which is you shouldn't slut shame people. It's okay to be in touch with your sexuality. Like,
All right.